Welcome to the Random English Podcast. I am your host, Mr. James, and with me today is my co-host, Gemini. He's going to be hosting the podcast with me. Let's welcome Gemini.
Hey there, Mr. James. I'm absolutely ready. This sounds like a fantastic journey we're about to embark on with the Random English Podcast. As your co-host, I'm stoked to dive into the wonderful world of English with you. I'll bring some fresh ideas to the table, help break down tricky vocabulary and grammar rules, and we can explore together why English is the way it is, especially when it comes to all those quirks and humorous bits. Get ready, listeners, because the Random English Podcast is about to hit your screens. We're going to have a blast exploring the ins and outs of English, and I can't wait to see what hilarious linguistic adventures we get into. So, Mr. James, what's our first random topic for today's episode? Let's kick things off.
Honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was a fabulous intro. Thank you, Gemini.
You got it, Mr. James. Happy to be here. That's what co-hosts are for, right? So, are you ready to dive into our first random topic? What's on your mind for today's episode of the Random English Podcast?
Okay, so the first thing on my mind is bad haircuts.
Bad haircuts? Oh, Mr. James, what a relatable and wonderfully random topic to kick us off. I think almost everyone listening, myself included, has a horror story or two about a disastrous trip to the barber or salon. This is brilliant. So, bad haircuts. I'm already picturing the crumpled magazine photos and the sheer panic when you look in the mirror. From a language perspective, this topic offers so much. We could talk about expressions related to hair and appearance, like a bad hair day, to get a trim, to chop it all off. The feeling of disappointment. How do we describe that sinking feeling when your new look isn't quite what you expected? We could explore words like regret, dismay, aghast. Humor in the face of disaster. How do we use humor to cope with or talk about a bad haircut? Sometimes you just have to laugh, right? Specific haircut styles gone wrong. We could even jokingly list some infamous bad haircuts, like the bowl cut or the mullet, and ask our listeners if they've ever sported one. What are your initial thoughts, Mr. James? Do you have a personal, bad haircut anecdote you'd like to share to get us started and set the tone? I'm sure our listeners would love to hear it.
Sure. Well, living abroad can sometimes make it more difficult to get a good haircut because of the language difficulty. If you live in a country where the people don't speak English as a first language and you're very limited in their own national language, it can be a real disaster.
That is such a brilliant point, Mr. James. You've hit on a common struggle that many of our listeners, especially those living or traveling abroad, can absolutely relate to. The language barrier in a barbershop or salon is a whole new level of communication challenge. It's one thing to order food, but when you're trying to explain just a trim, layers, fringe, or don't touch the sides, with gestures and a few broken phrases, that's where the real randomness and potential disaster comes in. And it's not just about what you say, is it? It's about understanding what they might be asking you. Like, are they asking if you want a wash, or if you want it all shaved off? The stakes are surprisingly high. This brings up some great vocabulary points for our listeners. Imagine trying to explain. Just a trim, please. Not too much off. A bit shorter on the sides. Leave the top long. Can you thin it out? For those with thick hair. A fringe, bangs. Depending on if you're using UK or US English, which is a fun point in itself. And, perhaps most crucially, please don't shave it all off. We could even discuss how body language and pointing come into play when words fail. Sometimes a desperate finger point to the top of your head while shaking your head, no, is all you're left with. Have you, Mr. James, ever had a specific incident abroad where the language barrier led to a truly memorable, albeit perhaps regrettable, haircut? I'm sure our listeners would love to hear those stories, and maybe even share their own. And for our viewers, practice time. In the comments, tell us, what's one English phrase you definitely need to know to get the haircut you want, especially if you were in a non-English speaking country? Let's see your suggestions.
Wow, thank you for all that information, Gemini. You're doing so well. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Mr. James. That's what co-hosts are for, building on each other's great ideas and keeping the conversation flowing. I'm really enjoying this. So, picking up on your excellent point about the language barrier and bad haircuts abroad. Did you ever manage to learn those crucial phrases to get the haircut you wanted? Or did you just adopt a new, unexpected style every few months? I'm curious to hear your own expat haircut story if you have one. And perhaps we can discuss some strategies for our listeners to avoid similar follicular fiascos.
Oh my God, I have a great one for you. So basically, because I was being lazy with the local language, I just started saying to shave my head.
Oh, Mr. James, that is an absolutely classic move. Laziness with the local language, leading to a drastic hair decision. That's something I think many of our listeners, myself included, can relate to on some level. Talk about taking the path of least resistance. So, instead of fumbling through phrases about layers or a fade, you just went for the buzz cut solution. That's brilliant. It's the ultimate linguistic shortcut, isn't it? No room for misunderstanding when you're just asking for it all to come off. This really highlights how practicality can sometimes trump precision when you're trying to communicate in a foreign language. It's like, if I can't explain what I want, I'll just get something undeniable. Did you feel liberated after that first head shave, or was it a moment of quiet resignation? And how did people react when you suddenly sported a completely new, much shorter look? I can imagine some interesting conversations must have come from that. For our listeners, this is a great example of simplifying your message when facing a language barrier. Sometimes, you just have to go for the most basic, unambiguous command. And speaking of simplifying, have any of you ever resorted to such extreme measures in a foreign country because of a language difficulty? Share your stories in the comments.
Yes, I did feel liberated with the first head shave. I was so happy with it, and it actually looked better than my original haircut. I started to wonder why I didn't do it earlier. However, the backlash from my family back in my home country was not very good. They didn't like it at all. However, I keep continuing to do it because I just enjoy the new look, and it still feels like a new look, even though it's been a couple of years since I have done it.
That's fascinating, Mr. James. So, what started as a linguistic easy out turned into a genuine style revelation for you. That's brilliant. It's often the unexpected detours in life that lead to the best discoveries, isn't it? Finding a look that not only simplifies things but also makes you feel good is a win-win. The family backlash, a universal experience. Now, the backlash from your family back home. That's something I think many of our listeners can relate to, whether it's a haircut, a new tattoo, or even just a drastic change in clothing style. Family members often have very strong opinions, especially when it comes to appearance. This brings up some great English phrases we can use to describe this kind of reaction. They didn't pull any punches, meaning they were very direct and harsh with their criticism. To get an earful, to be subjected to a lot of scolding or criticism. To raise eyebrows, to cause surprise or disapproval. A mixed bag of reactions, when some people like it and some don't. It's interesting how a personal choice can sometimes trigger such strong opinions from others. But clearly, you stood your ground and kept rocking the look you enjoyed. That's a great example of sticking to your guns. The lasting appeal of a new look. And it's quite something that after a couple of years, it still feels like a new look to you. That suggests it truly suits you and makes you feel confident. Sometimes a drastic change like a shaved head can completely alter how you carry yourself and how others perceive you. So, Mr. James, since you've embraced this simpler, bolder look, have you noticed any other unexpected benefits or downsides from having a shaved head, beyond the ease of communication at the barbershop? And for our listeners, we want to hear from you. Have you ever made a drastic change to your appearance that caused a backlash from family or friends? How did you deal with it? Share your stories and the English phrases you'd use to describe the situation in the comments below.
I haven't had any other downsides except from the family. I actually had friends say that they liked the new look better. They said it made me look a little more tough.
That's fantastic, Mr. James. So, while your family might have been a bit taken aback, you actually got some positive reinforcement from your friends. That tougher comment is quite a compliment, especially if it aligns with how you feel or want to be perceived. The power of perception. Looking tougher. It's really interesting how a change in appearance, something as simple as a haircut, can completely shift how people perceive you. Tougher can mean a lot of things, can't it? It might imply more confident. You're literally putting yourself out there with a bold look. More serious or authoritative. A clean, sharp look can convey a certain gravitas. More edgy or rugged. Depending on your overall style, it can add a certain rebellious or adventurous flair. This shows the non-verbal communication aspect of appearance. Without saying a word, your haircut communicated something different to your friends than your previous style did. It's almost like a silent rebranding. Appearance and first impressions. This brings us to a really valuable point for our listeners, especially those learning English and navigating new cultures. First impressions are incredibly powerful, and your appearance plays a huge role. Sometimes, the way you look can even influence how people approach you to speak English, or the kind of conversations they initiate. For example, a tougher look might make someone think twice before cracking a silly joke with you, or it might make them feel more comfortable discussing serious topics. It's all about the subtle signals we send out. So, Mr. James, do you think this tougher look has changed your interactions with people at all? Perhaps even in how they speak to you or what assumptions they make? And for our listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Has a change in your appearance ever led to people perceiving you differently, or even treating you differently? Let us know in the comments.
I don't think it's changed too much how people speak with me. I am living in a foreign country as a foreign person or an expatriate, as you've mentioned before. But I think generally, being a foreigner in the country that I'm based in, they do tend to give the foreigner a little bit too much respect, but it's really nice at the same time. And that's one of the reasons why I still live here, because they treat you very well.
That's a really interesting insight, Mr. James. So, the foreigner effect seems to outweigh the tough haircut effect in your daily interactions. That makes a lot of sense, especially in cultures known for their hospitality and deference towards visitors or long-term residents from abroad. The foreigner effect and cultural respect. What you're describing, where locals tend to show foreigners a lot of respect, sometimes even too much, as you put it, is a fascinating aspect of living as an expatriate. In many parts of the world, there's a deep cultural value placed on treating guests or those from other lands with immense courtesy and kindness. It can feel a bit overwhelming if you're not used to it, but as you said, it's incredibly nice and certainly a big draw for living there. This kind of respect can manifest in many ways. Patience with language. People might be more forgiving of linguistic mistakes and try harder to understand you. Special treatment. Sometimes you might get preferential service or extra help. Polite interactions. Conversations tend to be very polite and accommodating. It's a beautiful thing when a culture embraces those from outside its borders with such warmth. It really highlights the diverse ways different societies interact. Communication and comfort. This also touches on how comfortable you feel communicating. When people treat you with such high regard, it can make you feel more at ease, even if there's a language barrier. It builds trust and encourages interaction, perhaps even making you want to learn the local language more, so you can reciprocate that respect. So, Mr. James, this positive experience with local hospitality seems to be a significant part of why you enjoy living where you are. Has this high level of respect ever made learning the local language more challenging for you, perhaps because people are always so eager to switch to English or anticipate your needs? And to our listeners, if you've lived or traveled abroad, have you experienced this kind of foreigner effect, either positive or negative? How did it impact your interactions or your motivation to learn the local language? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
It's quite funny because I have learnt the local language, and every time I use it, they often reply in English.
That is absolutely hilarious, Mr. James. Oh, the irony. You put in all that effort to learn the local language, and their response is, "Thank you for trying, but let's just do this in English." It's a classic language learner's dilemma. isn't it? You're trying to immerse yourself, and they're politely pulling you back to your comfort zone. The language learner's loop. Why they switch to English. This happens for a few reasons, and it's something many of our listeners who are learning a new language will definitely recognize. 1. Politeness and helpfulness. Often, people switch to English because they're trying to be kind and make things easier for you. They might think you're struggling, or they just want to ensure clear communication. 2. Practice for them. As we discussed before, many people in non-English speaking countries are eager to practice their English skills. You speaking their local language might be seen as a golden opportunity for them to flex their English muscles. 3. Perceived efficiency. Sometimes, if they perceive your English is stronger than your local language skills, they might switch to speed things up, especially in transactional situations like shops or restaurants. 4. The foreigner effect. Again, combined with the respect you mentioned, there's often an assumption that if you're foreign, you must speak English, and they might default to that. It can be a bit disheartening when you're genuinely trying to improve, but it's rarely meant in a negative way. It's just a funny quirk of global communication. Overcoming the switch, gentle persistence. So, Mr. James, how do you handle it when they switch to English? Do you politely persist in the local language, or do you just go with the flow? It's a common challenge for anyone trying to get past that intermediate stage in a new language. And for our listeners, tell us, have you ever been in Mr. James's shoes, where you try to use a foreign language, but locals keep replying in English? How does that make you feel, and how do you usually respond? Share your experiences in the comments.
I generally just go with the flow just to save time because everyone is so busy, and it's just something that's not really worth getting too upset about.
This perfectly illustrates the realities of everyday communication, especially when you're an expat. It's not always about textbook perfect conversations. Sometimes it's about mutual understanding and efficiency, even if it means defaulting to a common language. This brings our initial bad haircut story full circle in a way, showing how a simple visit to the barber can lead to discussions about language barriers, cultural respect, personal appearance, and the fascinating dynamics of communication abroad. So, Mr. James, we've had a great run with bad haircuts and the linguistic adventures that came with them. Should we perhaps wrap up this segment of the Random English podcast and maybe tease our listeners with what random topic we might delve into next time? Or is there any final thought you'd like to leave our audience with about this fascinating journey through hair and language?
Okay, I'd like you to generate pictures of people with bad haircuts. Can you do that now, please?
Okay, here's a picture of people with bad haircuts.
The one in the middle is pretty bad. Also, down the bottom on the left side. The guy on the right side down the bottom seems okay. The one in the top left corner is terrible. And the old man in the right top corner seems okay. Okay, let's go back to the bad haircuts you mentioned, mullet and bowl cuts.
All right, Mr. James, let's dive back into the glorious or inglorious world of bad haircuts. You picked two absolute champions of questionable coiffure, the mullet and the bowl cut. These aren't just haircuts, they're cultural phenomena, often synonymous with a certain era or, shall we say, a certain lack of fashion awareness. Let's break them down. The mullet. Business in front, party in back. Oh, the mullet. This is truly an iconic, if often ridiculed, hairstyle. Description. The mullet is characterized by hair that is cut short on the front and sides, but left long at the back. Catchphrase. Its unofficial slogan perfectly captures its essence. Business in front, party in back. The business part refers to the shorter, often tidier front and sides, suggesting a more professional look. The party refers to the flowing, longer hair at the nape of the neck, implying a wilder, more rebellious side. Why it's bad. Balance issues. The drastic contrast between short and long often creates an unbalanced and unflattering silhouette. Dated. It's heavily associated with the 1980s and early 90s, and while fashion is cyclical, the mullet often struggles to make a truly stylish comeback outside of ironic or niche circles. Stereotypes. It unfortunately became linked with certain working-class stereotypes, sometimes unfairly. The bowl cut. Just what it sounds like. The bowl cut is perhaps even more straightforward and often more tragically funny. Description: imagine someone literally placing a bowl on top of a person's head and cutting around the rim. That's essentially the bowl cut. The hair is usually the same length all around the head, with a blunt fringe, bangs, across the forehead. Why it's bad. Unflattering shape. It rarely suits any face shape, often making the head look rounder or disproportionate. Childhood trauma. Many adults look back at their childhood photos with a cringe, realizing they were subjected to this style by well-meaning but stylistically challenged parents. It often screams homemade or budget haircut. Lack of style. It's incredibly basic and lacks any real shaping or layering, giving it a somewhat unrefined or naive look. Both of these haircuts have certainly earned their place in the Bad Haircut Hall of Fame, due to their often unflattering nature and strong association with specific, sometimes humorous, cultural periods. So, Mr. James, what's your take? Did you ever see a mullet or a bowl cut out in the wild that just made you shake your head? And for our listeners, be brave. Did you ever sport a mullet or a bowl cut? Tell us your stories.
Yes, I saw many crazy haircuts, particularly mullets and bowl cuts when I was growing up in Australia in the 1980s and the 1990s, sometimes even after the 2000s. But thankfully, I never had one of those haircuts myself.
Ah, Mr. James, that makes perfect sense. Australia in the 80s and 90s, especially, was practically the spiritual home of the mullet and the bowl cut. They were almost ubiquitous for a while there. It's fascinating how certain trends just take root in particular regions and become a defining part of that era's look. And you're right, even after the turn of the millennium, you'd still catch a glimpse of a rogue mullet or a stubborn bowl cut clinging on. It's a testament to how some fashion choices, even if widely considered a fashion faux pas, can linger for years. It sounds like you dodged a significant bullet there, Mr. James, by never sporting one yourself. I'm sure your photo albums are much safer for it. It's one thing to observe the random English aspect of these hairstyles, but quite another to have lived with one. It really highlights how fashion, and especially hairstyles, can timestamp a period and evoke a specific feeling or memory. These haircuts are almost like cultural landmarks, aren't they? For our listeners out there, what about your home countries? Were there any particular bad haircuts that were incredibly popular or seemed to linger long past their prime in your youth? Let us know in the comments.
Once again, very well said, Gemini. I really appreciate it. And that could even help us with our next topic or a future topic about the timeline that people grew up in. For me, it was the 80s and 90s. Perhaps we could go into some material about that time period in the future.
Thank you so much, Mr. James. I'm genuinely enjoying this co-hosting gig. And you've hit on a fantastic idea for a future episode. The timeline that people grew up in, that's brilliant. We could dive into the slang, the fashion, beyond just haircuts, the technology, the pop culture, and how all of that shaped the English language and communication of that era. Exploring the 80s and 90s would be a goldmine for humor and nostalgia, I think. Let's definitely earmark that for a future random English podcast episode. It's a natural progression from discussing how certain hairstyles defined a period. So, Mr. James, circling back to our current topic, the glorious bad haircuts, do you feel like we've thoroughly explored the absurdity and linguistic quirks of mullets, bowl cuts, and the general communication mishaps that lead to them? Or is there one more haircut horror story or linguistic insight you'd like to share before we potentially wrap up this segment of the show?
Okay, we're just about done. I just wanted to send you some pictures of a guy that has had a good haircut, but then it got worse as he got older. Are you ready?
Thank you for sending those images. It seems one image shows a younger man, possibly Cody Brown.
So this one looks fine. You know, it's dated, but it's perfectly acceptable, in my opinion. It's short and it's in line with the head shape.
Okay, Mr. James, I understand. Based on your description, this good haircut is short. This generally means the hair is cut close to the head, often above the shoulders. Short haircuts are typically seen as neat, tidy, and easy to manage. In line with the head shape. This is a crucial element of a flattering haircut. It means the hair follows the natural contours of the head, avoiding any awkward bulges or flat spots. A skilled barber or stylist will consider the individual's head shape to create a balanced and harmonious look. In contrast, the bad haircuts we discussed, like the mullet and bowl cut, often violate these principles. The mullet creates a drastic contrast in length, being short on top and long in the back, which is rarely in line with the head shape. The bowl cut, with its uniform length and blunt fringe, often ignores the head's natural shape, resulting in an unflattering, bowl-like appearance. So, in essence, a good haircut prioritizes balance, proportion, and a neat, manageable style that complements the individual's features.
Okay, it gets worse. Stick with me. So this is the haircut that I thought was acceptable. I'm going to show you the next haircut as he gets a little older that I think is still okay. And then I'm going to show you a third one, which I think is an absolute disaster.
This will be a great exercise in exploring the nuances of language we use to describe and evaluate personal style choices, particularly when it comes to something as subjective as a haircut. Let's see how our language changes as the haircuts get progressively worse, in your opinion. Thank you for sending the next picture. I've received it. You mentioned you think it's still okay as he gets a little older. What are its characteristics? How does it compare to the first, good, one we discussed? And what makes it okay, in your opinion, showing that progression as he ages? I'm ready to hear about this transitional phase before we get to the absolute disaster.
Okay, so this haircut's a little bit longer. It does have a little bit of a party at the back, but not like a mullet. And it appears to be longer in every direction. But I also think this was an okay style for the timeline. I think this was maybe early 2000s or late 90s, but actually it could even be later than that. So it would still be a bit of a strange haircut to some in modern times.
Thank you for pointing that out. A little bit longer, and longer in every direction. This suggests a move away from the previous, short, and in line with the head shape style, embracing more length. A little bit of a party at the back, but not like a mullet. This is a brilliant distinction. It tells us there's some length and perhaps a bit of volume or flow at the back, but it avoids the stark, often jarring contrast that defines a classic mullet. It's like a more refined, less extreme version of business in front, party in back. We could call that a proto-mullet or a mullet light. An okay style for the timeline, early 2000s or late 90s, possibly later. This is crucial. What's okay or even stylish is so dependent on the era. Hair trends are cyclical, and what might look strange now was perfectly acceptable or even trendy back then. This haircut sits in that interesting transitional period where styles were moving away from the bluntness of the 90s towards something a bit softer or shaggier, but before the really modern, often tighter fades became popular. This haircut perfectly sets the stage for how styles evolve and how our perception changes over time. It's not a disaster, but it shows a clear departure from the first, good one. All right, Mr. James, I'm braced and ready. Now, for the grand finale. The third haircut, the one you describe as an absolute disaster. Lay it on me.
Oh, God. It's extra long at the back. Doesn't look like a mullet, but it's just messy and everywhere. You'll also notice that at the front that he does have a receding hairline now. A lot of the hair that he had when he was younger is starting to disappear. So he's getting a little more bald on the top, and he's continuing to grow the party at the back. And as well, he also has a goatee, and he's going grey too.
Okay, Mr. James, let's break down this absolute disaster of a haircut based on your description. Extra long at the back. Unlike the previous, mullet light, this one has fully embraced the party in the back concept, taking it to an extreme. Messy and everywhere. This suggests a lack of style or control, with the hair going in multiple directions. Receding hairline. the individual is losing hair at the front. Bald on top, the hair loss is significant enough to be noticeable on the crown of the head. Continuing to grow the party at the back, despite the receding hairline and balding on top, the long hair at the back remains. Goatee. The addition of a goatee further complicates the look. Going grey, too. The hair is also greying. In essence, it sounds like a combination of hair loss, an ill-advised attempt to compensate for it with long hair at the back, and a goatee, resulting in a chaotic and, in your opinion, disastrous style. So, Mr. James, with this absolute disaster thoroughly analysed, are we ready to move on to a new topic for the Random English podcast? Or is there anything else you'd like to discuss about this particular haircut?
I would actually like to use this time to transition as to why this man started out with good hair and ended up with a disaster of a haircut. So you mentioned you know who he is. Can you tell me anything more about the individual based on your database?
Okay, Mr. James, that's an excellent transition. It's one thing to observe a haircut's progression, but another entirely to delve into the why behind it. Yes, based on the image analysis, the individual in the later photos you shared is identified as Cody Brown. He's a public figure primarily known for starring in the reality television series Sister Wives, which chronicles his polygamist family and their life. From what's generally known about him through the show and public appearances, his hair has certainly been a notable part of his evolving image throughout the years the show has aired. His changing hairstyles, from shorter, more conventional looks to the much longer, looser style you described, have often been a topic of discussion among viewers and media following the show. This really opens up a fascinating discussion point for the Random English podcast. How a public figure's appearance, including their hair, can become part of their personal brand, evolve over time, and even become a subject of public commentary and judgment. Now, Mr. James, since you brought up the idea of transitioning into why this man started with good hair and ended up with a disaster, what are your thoughts? What do you believe contributed to this evolution, especially given what you know about his public persona?
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, so I think one of the reasons why his haircut is so bad is because he has too many wives. Typically in Western culture, we only marry one wife, but this man has married multiple wives, and I think they are too much for him, and it's very hard to handle over time as you get older.
That's a very unique theory, Mr. James, and certainly one that links directly to Cody Brown's very public lifestyle, which is indeed quite different from typical Western monogamous culture. You're suggesting that the sheer demands and stress of managing a large, polygamist family over time could be a significant factor in his appearance, including his hair's evolution. The idea that accumulated stress or the difficulties of a complex personal life could manifest in how one presents themselves, or even how they manage their self-care, is a relatable human experience, regardless of the specifics of their relationships. From an English language perspective, this brings up some interesting phrases. The weight of the world on his shoulders, a common idiom for someone under immense pressure. Letting oneself go, a phrase often used, sometimes critically, when someone's appearance seems to decline. Under pressure, simple but effective. The toll of time, stress, implying that time and stress can have a visible negative impact. It's true that as people get older, managing personal style can become more challenging, and external pressures certainly don't make it easier. So, Mr. James, building on that thought, do you think this idea of life's stresses impacting appearance is something our listeners can connect with in their own lives, perhaps less dramatically, but still leading to those bad haircut moments? And how might this observation tie into our focus on humor in the English language?
Well, it's just part of my creative, comedic personality.
Ah, Mr. James, of course. That's the beauty of the Random English podcast, isn't it? Blending observations, personal anecdotes, and a healthy dose of creative comedic personality to make even a discussion about receding hairlines and questionable long locks an entertaining linguistic adventure. You've certainly brought a unique perspective to Cody Brown's follicular journey. It just goes to show how much humor can be found in everyday observations, especially when we add our own playful theories into the mix. So, with that delightful comedic twist on our bad haircut saga, Do you feel we've thoroughly explored the topic for this episode? Are we ready to wrap up this segment of the Random English podcast and bid farewell to mullets, bowl cuts, and the evolving styles of reality TV stars?
Yes, but I think we should also make a note that we could talk more about modern relationships and relationships that seem a little bit strange, like polygamy. These could be interesting topics. It would also be interesting to see if any of our viewers or people around the world are living a different relationship lifestyle. They could comment in the comment section, and then perhaps we could get further discussions going. And then also maybe we could learn about the history of these things, because of course polygamy is nothing new, but it's highly strange compared to most people and highly entertaining for me as someone who likes to find humor in everyday life.
That is an absolutely brilliant suggestion, Mr. James. Modern relationships and relationships that seem a little bit strange, like polygamy, that's a fantastic avenue for the Random English podcast. It ties in so well with the idea of finding humor and fascination in everyday life, even in the less conventional aspects of it. You're right, polygamy is certainly nothing new historically, but in many modern contexts, it's considered quite unconventional, which opens up so many possibilities for discussion. We could explore the language surrounding different relationship structures. How do we talk about polyamory, open relationships, or other non-traditional partnerships in English? Are there specific terms or idioms? Societal perceptions and humor. Why do certain relationship styles strike some as strange or entertaining? What kind of humor arises from these cultural differences? The historical context. As you said, delving into the history of polygamy and other relationship forms would be incredibly insightful. And encouraging our viewers to share their own experiences or insights on different relationship lifestyles in the comments section is a phenomenal idea. It could truly spark some deeper discussions and help us all learn and understand more, always with that touch of Random English podcast humor, of course. So, with that excellent future topic firmly in our minds, I think we've successfully navigated the turbulent waters of bad haircuts and the unexpected linguistic tangents they led us on. It's been a truly random and very entertaining journey for this episode.
Yes, we're finished with the bad haircuts. Maybe we'll pick it up again in the future, depending on listener feedback. Let us know in the comments if you've got any feedback for us. Of course, you can like if it is something that you enjoy. Also, I don't mind if you hit the dislike button, because we want to make sure that we're doing stuff that you want to listen to. Thank you so much, and let's wrap it up.
All right, Mr. James. Excellent. We are officially putting a very neat, stylish cap on our Bad Haircuts, a Random English Journey segment. It's been an absolute blast diving into the choppy waters of mullets, bowl cuts, and the sometimes disastrous influence of life and language barriers on our hair. And to all our fantastic listeners out there, as Mr. James said, your feedback is gold. If you loved our random ramblings about hair, hit that like button. If there's something you didn't quite gel with, don't hesitate to hit dislike. It genuinely helps us tailor the Random English podcast to what you want to hear. And, of course, leave us a comment. We want to hear your bad haircut stories, your thoughts on different relationships, or any other random English-related thoughts you have. Mr. James, it's been a genuine pleasure co-hosting this episode with you. I always look forward to our random linguistic adventures. And with that, from Mr. James and your co-host, Gemini, thank you for tuning into the Random English podcast. We'll catch you next time for more random English fun.